Time for round number 10 of the IndyCar iRacing Series. And we head to Mid-Ohio, where unfortunately there won't be any racing action this weekend. The real circuit, but the virtual circuit is alive with the sound of the IndyCars. And we head in towards the second half of the season, Sumil, and it's a very exciting championship picture here because Hugo Olsen, he still leads the championship as we bring up the standings on your screen right now. But there you can see, Sumil, it's a very, very close season and should be a very exciting race for us here today.
It is indeed, and if last year's IndyCar race over here is anything to go by, this one should be a proper firecracker, especially when you consider all the championship implications that can come into picture, Arjuna.
Yeah, and the standings up on your screen are inclusive of 3 drop weeks, so we have 6 races to go after this one, I believe, so there's still a long way to go, but a lot of these drivers have already used up, Sumil, some of the drop weeks. You can use up a drop week if you have a bad week, or even if you have some real life, conflict. And some drivers like Hugo Olsen have already missed 2 weeks, and that puts them in a position where each of these upcoming races is so vital to ensure they don't slip back in this championship fight.
Absolutely. When you've got people like David Soranzo and Cesar Manzaro right on your tail, consistency becomes so important. And especially when you bring up the fact that Hugo Olsen has already used up a couple of his drop rounds. So for him, not missing any race right now is going to be super essential, as is having a good one right here. And tell you what, Arjuna, from experience, having a good race at Mid-Ohio, easier said than done.
It's a very, very tricky circuit, and traffic is going to be a big factor here. There you see the schedule up on your screen. Just 5 rounds to go after this one. And Sumil, 2 weeks from now, it's the big one, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Oval. That's going to be happening just before what is going to be a fanless Indy 500, a prospect that I think a lot of fans aren't really excited about, but nevertheless, the Indy 500 is a special event, and I can't wait to see the cars out on track.
Likewise, on the real circuit and the virtual one as well. It's going to be so much fun. Thankfully, we do have the fans in the virtual circuit, that's for sure. And every time we've had a good iRacing Indy 500, we have just been entertained to the very limit. So, lots of things to come up in terms of IndyCars. Let's focus on this particular road course race that we have here tonight. Trust me, it's going to be awesome.
Should be a good one. 68 laps in store for us today. Qualifying is underway, and most of the cars have already got their times done and dusted. There you can see 90 seconds still left, and we'll pull it up on the left-hand side of your screen. But right now, Christian Steele on the pole position by Sumil. It's less than half a tenth there.
That is mind-blowing. The gap between Christian Steele and Hugo Olsen, barely anything. And if we get to see something quite like that in the race, again, slightly unlikely, then that's going to be so much fun to watch. But Arjuna, looking back as well, Chris Aon, he's not too far off as well. That's under half a tenth of a second, these 3 guys. That's qualifying aside, in the race, though, replicating something like this is going to be very tricky, but encouraging signs indeed.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be an interesting race out front, but you can see the top 10 separated by less than a second, and there's some interesting names further back as well. You got Brendan Lichtenberg, who's deciding to join us, Broken Arrow teammate of Christian Steele. And I think, Sumil, one of the names I'm most interested in here is Chris Aon, because we've seen him on the road courses before. The last time out at Road America, unfortunately, though, the pace was there, the strategy was not, and he lost out by just not seeing the fuel-saving strategy Andrew Kinsella used to win that race. So let's see what he's going to try and do here.
Indeed, Chris Aon went on the aggressive in the final part of the race. Sadly, not really paying out for him towards the end, but what a better learning that we had from that than the fact that knowing Chris Aon, regardless of the fact that if he's going on an alternative strategy, he can push very hard and push the other guys into making a mistake. That is something he's very good at. We saw that at Detroit Belle Isle as well. He was on the verge of winning at Road America, sadly not working out for him. But if that's anything to go by, he should be very good at a road course quite like this one that we have tonight.
And with that said, it's time to take a look at the starting grid for today's race. Just wait for it to come up on your screen right now, but there we go. It is Christian Steele on pole position, with championship leader Hugo Olsen lining up next to him on row number 1, and it's Chris Aon and Stefan Petrat, Team Heiskenveld driver, completing row number 2. Then we've got Adam Crane, who has recently joined Satellite Racing. Lining up next to him is going to be Andreas Seik, with Cesar Manzado and David Soranzo completing row number 4. Then Vilda Wallen's going to be in position number 9, Jesper Orman in P10, then Brekton Lichtenberg and Connie Nasling gonna round out row number 6. John Downing, well, we got a few more names back here that we recognize, and Guillermo Martin Gonzalez Diaz is not one of them. But then Matt Houston and Robin Glennox, 15th and 16th positions. Daniel Manzano, Carlos Ruiz 4, as Zach Campbell in our chat putting it, currently leading the Carlos Ruiz class over Carlos Ruiz. Position number 19 with Christopher Block completing the top 20. Final row of the grid, Radek Serka and Jason Wallet. And the start here, Sumal, is always a very interesting prospect because unlike in the real world, we don't use that later start line, I guess you could call it, after the keyhole. Instead, we use the regular start-finish line. And that's just a very difficult place often to start a race.
Indeed it is, because the start straight here at Mid-Ohio is very short. That is the home straight. Regularly, as Arjuna mentioned, we start on the backstretch, but for these iRacing IndyCar races, it's going to be at the finish line. That is the real world finish line. For here, it's going to be the start line for us. Can be a bit confusing, I know, but watch out for this one, because the home straight at Mid-Ohio, it's very tiny. So making moves on the first lap is going to be very tricky heading into turn 1, as you normally expect. So the keyhole is going to be the place where you are going to see some lunges. But trust me, these drivers are going to take it slightly more cautious on the first lap when you realize the fact that this one, Arjuna, is a properly long race. This
68 laps awaiting all of these drivers. At least 2 pit stops as well, with a little bit of flexibility in the strategy as well. And some of these drivers do have spotters who will be helping them. Christian Steele has Zach Campbell in his pit box and also in the YouTube chat, and he's going to be the car that leads us to the green flag, and he immediately jumps there. Unfortunately, we talk about the difficulty. It seems as though right now everyone has got through except David Soranzo, one of the championship leaders, back in the pack, Sumal.
It's all gone wrong for David Soranzo on the very first lap. On the exit of the final corner, Soranzo has spun around. He's got a broken front wing, it seems. And on the first lap, Arjuna, not even on the first corner, we are seeing drama already.
It didn't take long. We'll grab a replay at the end of this first lap, but right now out front, Christian Steele trying to chase away now from Chris Aon, but Hugo Olsen has also fallen back. David Soranzo continues to struggle further back in the pack, but they make their way around this tricky infield corner. And Sumo, some of the YouTube chat has been talking about the engine heating as well. I wonder if some of these cars are going to just lay back a little bit more, as there's been a bigger issue as well. Matt Houston is around. And oh, this is an incident that involved a few cars. Let me try and get this one up on your screen, Sumo.
First lap carnage on the road course. Where have we seen that one before? Look at Matt Houston's car. It is properly damaged and bruised and battered, this one. The front one, the front end plate, it's gone. You see some part of the front bumper taken off as well. What has happened, Arjuna? So there you see David Soranzo getting a bit of a tap. Gentle love case, and he gets pushed out to the gravel. Big implications in the championship for the Frenchman. But what has happened to Matt Houston? That is going to be the key question.
Yeah, so that was the first incident. Now we'll grab a look at the second one. Here we go. It involves one of the drivers with many names, but here we'll see Matt Houston's in the background of this shot. And unfortunately, he gets... Oh, he just collects the cars in front of them as they turn around, Sumo.
And that, folks, is why you need the aero screen. Had this happened, something quite like this happened in real life, you would be seeing some very dark and dirty news, that one. But Robin Glennox in this one taps him around, and then you see him, just Matt Houston, coming around pretty much like a ramp boat, Arjuna. That's one of the more unusual things I've ever seen. But yeah, bad news for Houston that his car is properly damaged.
And it all kicked off very early, but out front, Christian Steele has managed to pull away by about 1 second as he completes the second lap of this race. The top 10 cars now separated by 10 seconds, Sumo. So this is one of the tracks where, you know, this tight and technical nature, sometimes that dirty air just creates these little gaps, and maybe that's what we're going to start seeing now.
Absolutely. These Indy cars are not as air-reliant as Formula 1 cars, so the dirty air does have a slightly lower effect, but still it is quite significant, because in the end, when you are closing up to another car heading into a corner, the dirty air, the wake of the car in front of you, it just throws up a lot of thin air for the car behind, and the reason for that is because all the air is being pushed wide towards the other car right behind, so the car behind, they literally cannot chase. It gives you so much of understeer. When you come to a section like the S's, the undulating, tight and twisty, and the serpentine section quite like this one, your car just doesn't perform the way you want to, and you lose so much of downforce. The lap times fall, And in the end, as you can see, the gaps begin to rise.
Yeah, the gap's holding fairly steady here, but unfortunately further back. I'm trying to grab a look at the replay now to try and find what happened to Hugo Olsen, Sumo, because obviously, he started in second place and he's currently in fifth place, and, passing is so difficult here. We continue to watch on board with Chris Aon around the carousel down in towards turn number 1. He's having to hold it very tight, just trying to run it out wide. Not daring there, interestingly, to touch any of that exit curbing, but you go down into the keyhole now, and Sumo, this is one of those opportunities to set up a passing move, but also where you can now run off the corner and down in towards turn number 4. It's another opportunity to make a pass, but this time just a little too far behind.
A little too far behind indeed. They are approaching China Beach. It's a tricky little corner, this one. Downhill braking for this. So you have to really set up your move from the exit of the keyhole to get something done right here. Because immediately after the China Beach, you see this lovely section. It's a proper driver street where you have undulating corners. The course just rises up, goes down again, and rises back up and goes back down again. It is so interesting. All while having some rather fantastic fast-paced corners in the middle as well. So on one side, Arjuna, this is such a fun track to drive on. The payoff for this may be that drivers aren't able to close up to each other in this section. So that's where you're going to see drivers being slightly more apprehensive, slightly more cautious. But what's happened to our man Hugo Olsen in the yellow car right here?
Well, right now what he's doing is placing the pressure onto Adam Crane in front of him. Andreas Ike behind also trying to just add a little bit more pressure, and he touches the curb in turn number 1. That can unsettle the car a little bit too much, and fortunately there he's managed to get away with it. And Sumo, I have managed to find an incident there. Let's go back and take a look at the replay. It's going to be coming down into turn number 1, and he just outbrakes himself.
Oh boy.
Very, very fortunate that the power slide driver able to gather that one up in time.
That could have been horribly wrong. Had Hugo Olsen gone wide, the grass here at Mid-Ohio is unforgiving. You go out there, and especially in a car so oversteery as these Indy cars, they just don't let you come back into control. Somehow Hugo Olsen keeps it safe. And that's a clear case, Arjuna. He just must have gone on a bit too hot, expecting all your tires to be at the right temperature. Sadly, though, that's not how things work here.
And championship leader, that's not something you could really afford. This is an opportunity to have started out in second place and maybe is trying to stick with Christian Steele, who's now 2 seconds clear of Chris Aon. So Hugo Olsen, an uncharacteristic mistake down into turn number 1, and he's got a long time to now make up for that mistake, Hugo. But Sumo, you talk about championship fights. You're now in a championship battle here with one of the contenders. How do you approach this type of situation? How hard are you willing to push?
That's a tricky question right here. Normally, if you're someone like Hugo Olsen, after making a mistake quite like that, you have the perception of thinking, I made a mistake, I need to go all out. But that isn't exactly the thing that helps out. We are seeing Hugo using the draft, trying to get the move done into China Beach. He's heading to the outside line. It's a daring place for this one, Arjuna.
He's going to try and stick it around the outside, but Adam Crane's going to just force him wide and cut off the corner. And I think what we're seeing here is Adam Crane struggling a little bit more. They're now over 5 seconds behind third place, so the battle for the podium just slowly inching away from these drivers. 4th, 5th, and 6th on screen, with 7th and 8th as well pretty close behind, and Hugo Olsen all over the back right now of Adam Crane.
You can see Hugo Olsen on the charge. He may be able to get something done, and as I was saying early on, normally in a case like this one, you expect drivers to go all out, trying to make things happen for themselves. That is one approach that Hugo Olsen is using. On the other hand, though, you can maybe sit back and think, I can approach this race the systematic way. Try to see how things go, or try to gain the upper hand on strategy. From the looks of things, it is Hugo Olsen on the charge as we now head to the keyhole for the 7th time. Arjuna, he's not close enough it seems, but a good run of the exit can help him get something done at China Beach.
And Hugo Olsen, that's one corner where you can run slightly different lines, Sumo. Some drivers choose to go a little bit deeper. Some other drivers choose to take it a little bit tighter. And once again, Hugo Olsen getting close. Adam Crane's going to jink to the inside, force Hugo Olsen to the outside again. But I think this time the Swede just almost managed to get it done, but getting onto the grass, and that's not what you needed. Lost a little bit too much grip, and Adam Crane able to hold the position once again. But this is definitely proving to be a traffic jam right now here. Because I think, in fact, Andreas Ike as well here, Sumo, might be a little bit quicker as well.
It is indeed Hugo Olsen on the charge in the end. He's trying to put his noses into all sorts of dirty places. Thankfully for him, it's all clean right now. They're not powering off of the SS, coming back to the final part of the track. That's the carousel onto the main stretch, Arjuna. Good point that he mentioned right there. They're all trying to battle out. It's a proper traffic jam. Remember, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, a very narrow circuit. Back in the day, they actually made a big alteration to make this track, 40-odd feet wide? But it is still quite tight. So for Hugo Olsen, he has to use every single one of those millimeters on the circuit to get something done. And guess what? He is doing exactly that. Here he is on the charge yet again.
Yeah, Andreas Eick behind, and Vilda Wallin as well is closing in as well. There you can see in the background of the shot, and a Cesar Manzado as well. So this really is where a lot of the championship contenders are, Sumo.
It really is. You see Hugo Olsen trying to get something done around the outside of that first S. He goes down the inside this time, but gets blocked off yet again. And that's the best thing, Arjuna. Now that these guys are fighting and dueling against each other, you can see all those cars right at the back there coming closer and making this an even bigger battle. You mentioned Wilder Wallin, Cesar Manzado, Brendan Lichtenberg. All these guys are right within seeing distance. For Hugo Olsen, that may be slightly worrying, but his main target is right up ahead, not behind.
Oh, and he gets a little bit too much power down off the corner, and that's really just going to check up that entire train. Andreas Eick looks to the inside, thinks better of it down into turn number one, but now, and Adam Crane, he's got a lap or so, Sumo, to kind of just calm down a little bit and maybe start setting up the rest of the race. The fuel window here, I think we said it was about 25, 26 laps, Sumo, so we're now approaching the halfway point of the stint, and that's when, you know, in the race like this, when your fuel windows aren't as set in stone, you do have a little bit more leeway to play around with the fuel windows.
You do indeed, but the question is, how will someone like Hugo Olsen play around with that one? After that early mistake, you expect Hugo Olsen to go all guns blazing as we have a big incident on the track. That is, Radek Sciorra, he seems to be going wide in the final corner, Arjuna.
Yeah, we'll get a replay up on your screen right now. It's coming out of the carousel, and I think we're going to see a very similar incident, just getting on the power a little bit too much. Oh, and in fact, here he loses it even earlier, Sumo, carries too much speed into the corner, but fortunately he was able to gather it up and not too much damage to that car.
That was a rather bizarre incident, but he went slightly wide of the carousel. Again, very easy thing for you to do because you can just understeer and use a very wide line, just as you can do in Road America's carousel. But what was rather bizarre was that his rear tire was on the grass, and we know for a fact, normally as well on the tarmac, these Indy cars are properly oversteering. When you put one wheel on the grass, that is the proper recipe for disaster, and that is exactly what we saw right there. But coming back to the topic of fuel, Arjuna, if you are Hugo Olsen, what do you do in this case? You want to push hard, you want to maximize your race pace and try to make all the early moves to compromise with the mistake that you made early on. But that said, he would be spending extra time in the pit lane, and he would have to pit early on if he goes a bit too aggressive and consumes a lot more fuel. So, how do you balance something like this out?
Yeah, well, what he's not balancing right now is his push-to-pass usage. We ride on board with the Swede, and you can see the third box from the left. That's the push-to-pass count, and he's already used 5 of his 10. And so Sumo, he's not rationing that out very well at all, and that push-to-pass also uses a little bit more fuel. It might just mean he's setting up for a slightly shorter stint in this first stage of the race, but unfortunately, we're just completing 10 laps right now, and you know, Sumo, he's already burned half his push-to-passes, and that's going to make it that much more difficult to try and make moves happen later in the race.
Absolutely. Hugo Olsen will just be struggling towards the end because he won't have that extra power boost that all the other people will have in the end. And I know, yeah, you can just come up and say Mid-Ohio, not really the most straight-oriented circuit, but you still do have a long back straight where Hugo Olsen can make that push-to-pass a huge difference for him. So, 5 push-to-passes burned already. Things aren't headed in his way. This is a sign of a properly desperate driver trying to get things done in his way.
Oh, and is Adam Crane getting a little bit loose off the corner? He's getting very, very defensive through the turn 5 and 6 segment out of the S's, and Andreas Eick as well, just getting that much closer as everyone here just checks up a little bit more. And I think Hugo Olsen, you can see on the push-to-pass usage, Sumo, often I think if you burn that many push-to-passes, you're getting that much more desperate as Hugo Olsen goes off into the grass once again. And just speaking to the state of mind right now, clearly the Swede is pushing extremely hard.
You don't want to have a chat with someone when they're driving quite like this one. If you just come close to Hugo Olsen, chances are he'll probably not be in the best of moods. Burning off 5 push to passes in only a matter of 12 laps. Now, if this was a 12-lap race, again, it's all fine, but it isn't. So it isn't fine in the end for Hugo Olsen. It is probably heading against him. He's currently in P5. To be honest with you, that's not a very bad place for him to be in. But when you consider the aspect that he is the championship leader, you start to consider that things are actually falling away from him.
Well, the good news here is that other than Adam Crane, the 3 guys out in front, Stefan Petra in that last podium position, aren't really competing for this title right now, Sumo. But you can see how much the time that Adam Crane is currently losing, and it's about half a second a lap. And I talked about the traffic jam. I do believe, Sumo, if Hugo Olsen and Andreas Like were able to get clear here, they would be able to start chipping away at that gap a little bit.
They would be indeed, but Adam Crane certainly not helping things out. All the dirty air is forcing Hugo Olsen to just sit behind over there, and Andreas Ike also losing out with the same. Tyres can be actually marauded by this sort of thing as well, as we see Hugo Olsen getting a bit too twitchy. When you have the dirty air coming towards you, the tyres get chewed off a bit more early on as well. So for Hugo Olsen, it's a bad place for him to be in terms of the championship, and also in terms of keeping his fuel and tyres intact as well. So overall, it's not in a very good place.
We were talking about this at the start of the race, and some drivers have reported this week, Sumo, that they've been overheating when they're stuck in traffic like this. And I know Hugo, as part of Power Slide, was actually wondering if he should be switching his radiators up. But I think a lot of drivers are being aided right now by the benefit of getting a little bit. Oh, Hugo Olsen with a big issue. He's off into the grass. He's managed to gather it up, but he's going to slip back to 8th place, and he's almost going to lose it again, getting back onto the track.
Fast and furious mid-Ohio drift. It's all going wrong for Hugo Olsen from the very first lap. That's such an easy thing to do on the exit of the S's. You're going downhill. You're trying to put down all those 700 horsepower of the car at one go. Cold tires, heading downhill. The inclination just doesn't help. And Hugo Olsen thankfully keeps it on the track, but loses a whole ton of positions. If you were seeing desperacy a couple of laps ago, you're going to see double of that right now from Hugo Olsen.
Yeah, well, this is where, as the championship leader, you just have to calm down a little bit. You now see the gap in front, 3 seconds. You see Brendan Lichtenberg behind you. This is where you start to just relax a little bit. Maybe realize, Sumo, that you qualified in 2nd position. You clearly have the pace to start getting back out front. But what we will do is we'll jump out to the battle for the lead. There's Chris Aon, rival Autosport driver who's trying to chase down Christian Steele, who continues to lead this race. And Christian is actually starting to come up on lap traffic himself. And this is one of the things that we thought would be the deciding factors of the race. How each of these drivers navigates through the traffic and how quickly they're able to make sure they don't get involved. Unfortunately, there, one of the cars just going to peel off onto the inside, let your race leader go on through.
Absolutely. Like a proper road course, it's going to be very, very hard to get by the traffic. You can't just simply move to one side in most of these corners. It's good if you encounter the traffic in the first couple of sectors. When you get to the S's at the exit of China Beach, that is when you do not want to see any sort of traffic, because there, getting aside for the other car is going to be so hard. You want to encounter them right here on the back stretch. So that's a good thing for the leaders. But yeah, only 15 laps in, Arjuna. That's the fun part. Only 15 laps in. We are already seeing the leaders encountering lap traffic. That is one sign of their dominance, but also the other sign of the huge gulf in pace difference over here. Not exactly the most encouraging thing to see, but the leaders are on the charge, and that is quite fun to watch out for.
I mean, the Dallara IR18 is one of the most difficult cars on the service, Sumo, to drive on the roadside, and that does get to tend to be borne out in the pace differences we see. A lot of people call it a multi-class race, and Stefan Petra from 3rd position has gone around. I believe this is coming through Thunder Valley. Fortunately for the Team Heiskensveld driver, though, seemingly no damage there, Sumo. Here comes the replay up on your screen right now.
Oh my goodness me, that corner is catching out so many people. Down the crest, takes the left-hander. Oh, this is the carousel. No, oh no, that's the... Oh my goodness me. Again, very similar thing. When you're going downhill, the car is not exactly properly flat out, so you can't put the power down very early on. Stefan Petra, unfortunately, getting a bit too eager, getting a bit too excited on the exit. And there you see him spinning right around, baby, right around.
And he actually lost it fairly early in the corner as well, so looped it, getting onto that curb as well. So he's still running in 3rd place and all good, but we'll jump back to Adam Crane right now because Andreas Ike continues to chase him down. And 4th position, going quite well for Adam Crane, who was in this fight for the championship, Sumo, but with someone like Andreas right behind really starting to pile on the pressure right now, do you maybe just wonder about letting him go?
That's a good question. You know, the other thing for all these guys is also the clean air factor, because Adam Crane right here, he's sitting in the clean air, he's not exactly able to make the best of things, and Andreas Seidl might just be sitting frustrated, thinking, oh man, when is this guy going to make a mistake? Because at Mid-Ohio, it is so hard to pass unless the other guy does not make a mistake, even when you're a driver as good as Andreas Seidl. So, for Adam Crane right here, hogging up the track is going to be quite an interesting part, Arjuna. But at the backstretch, you somewhat wonder if he can sit behind the draft of Andreas Seidl, he can save just a little bit more fuel, and that can have a major advantage in the strategy. So, how will things play out? We are going to be very interested to see how that plays out in the end. 70 laps done, the pit stop strategy should be around lap 25 or 26. So, lots of things are going to come up rather soon.
Yeah, and that would be almost if you ran the tank dry, but there are some drivers in the field who are known for maybe splitting the race a little bit more equally, as Andreas Seidl continues to close in under braking down into turn number 4 as they go through the S's this time around. He's just going to be putting the pressure on once again, and I think for the team talent driver who unfortunately last time out at Iowa, Sumo, did not really go his way, he's looking to have a little bit of a stronger run right now, and in 5th place, looking quite good here.
Frankly, P5 is not a bad place for him to be in. He can just hog up the track, defend for all his might, and end up getting a very good points finish. But yeah, for Andreas Seidl, he just has to get past Adam Crane, because P4 in the end, well, simple maths in the end, the higher up you finish, the more points you get. So for Andreas Seidl, he would just desperately want to get on to Adam Crane and make that move for position. And critically, Arjuna, the important part is Stefan Petrat with that spin, he's not exactly too far off in the end. So Stefan Petrat around, what, 12 odd seconds ahead of Adam Crane right now. With a very Herculean effort, maybe, just maybe, Andreas Seidl will be able to get past Stefan Petrat. So, that's all down to the strategy element. All we know is Andreas Seidl, he's got the pace. Can he materialize it in the end? A lot of laps left to go now.
Yeah, well, the gap, not 12 seconds to Stefan Petrat. It's just 2.583, the gap between Stefan and Chris Aoun in second. That's the gap that's 12 seconds, Sumo. But nevertheless, point made. Adam Crane, he's only, 2.5 seconds behind the gap. Has not really changed too much over the last 2 laps, and I think right now as we approach the pit window, some people in our YouTube chat have been positing that the overcut might be the stronger strategy here, and given that the track temperature is fairly cool, we didn't really talk about it at the start of the race, but track conditions 39 degrees in the track temperature right now. That is not that warm, Sumo, and the colder tires here, that first lap, I think we're going to see a lot of cars struggling here, and I think the YouTube chat makes a very, very good point that I think cars that are able to go that lap or 2 longer, able to extend the stint, they'll be in a much stronger position than some of the other cars on the strategy.
100%. It's going to be such a crucial factor. When you have the clean air, especially through the final couple of sectors, it's going to have a huge difference, as we are seeing a familiar face in the pit lane. It's Hugo Olsen exiting the pit lane. The Powerstar Motorsports car blinking on lap 19, so he's going early.
Going very early indeed. 26 seconds in the stop, and one of his countrymen going to slot in right behind him, so he's come out into some decently fresh air. Just Carlos Ruiz in front for 11th place, and there you can see the bottom right hand corner of your screen, the track map right now. The car's starting to get a little bit separated here, Sumo. That's what the leaders are starting to have to deal with, is this lap traffic. So it's going to be a theme of the race from now on in, and I think the pit strategy is just going to mix it up that much more.
Absolutely. The critical factor, Arjuna, if you make an undercut or something quite like what Hugo Olsen has done, you do not want to end up in front of any sort of lap traffic or any slow-moving cars, because with fresher tires, your advantage will be nullified in a matter of minutes. And that sort of thing can really put your race back on a very slower level. You can't really get the maximum out of that. So timing of pit stops is going to be critical as well. That overcut, it may just give you the advantage of clean air, which you can use to get some really fast laps towards the end of the stint and put out a gap ahead of the other drivers. So it's all very interesting, but to see where you come out after your pit stop is going to be so important today.
And we saw last year in the real race here that heroic drive almost from Scott Dixon to survive with those very worn tires and hold off his teammate Felix Rosenqvist. I mean, Sumo, it's very hard to pass here, but I mean, do you expect that if we see a similar situation, we see Adam Crane really having to hang on here, do you think he'll be able to do the same kind of thing maybe on the last lap of the race? Or do you think that strategy element, being able to run longer, is also going to benefit drivers at the end who are able to preserve the tires?
It's a tricky question. Ideally, you do want to have your tires in the prime condition towards the final laps. But I'm actually going to give it down to the fresher tires in the end, because what happened last year was that Scott Dixon was the driver who got it done. And Scott Dixon, a proper IndyCar legend, does things that nobody else possibly can on the circuit. And that is what we saw with the charging Felix Rosenqvist, his teammate, right on the back. He somehow kept the lead with ailing tires, won the race in the end. And that sort of a thing, Arjuna, is quite hard to imagine in these iRacing IndyCar races. As I mentioned previously, that is something that only a legend like Scott Dixon can do. So personally, I would favor having fresher tires towards the end. But let's see how things can play out, because it depends from driver to driver. As we have seen in the start of this race as well, having the track advantage can be quite a critical factor. So how this plays out is going to be quite fun. But we have Hugo Olsen on the charge after his fresh pit stop. Fresher tires down the inside. Nice and easy for him.
And that was crucial. He could not afford to get bottled up for too long. Like the YouTube chat is mentioning right now, we talk about Scott Dixon, an IndyCar legend. Well, Hugo Olsen has to channel the spirit of another champion, Michael Schumacher, and put in about 20 laps worth of qualifying laps here, Sumo, because I think that's honestly going to be the only way that this undercut is really going to work out for him. We've talked about the disadvantage in many different ways now. Ultimately now, this is going to be a champion's drive if he really wants to get towards the front of the field.
And that will be so entertaining to see Hugo Olsen go consistently on qualifying laps, trying to make things happen for himself. Again, that's what the champions do, you see. They make their own luck, they make things happen for themselves, even in the most tricky of races. And for Hugo Olsen, it is going to be a proper sprint, a proper dash towards the end, with every single lap having a huge implication towards the end. Now though, Andreas Eichhardt Jr. still sticking behind, but critically, he has stayed back. So maybe what he's doing is staying behind from Adam Crane, trying to make sure that he's not in the dirty air, because when you are in the dirty air, your tires can be worn out a lot early on. And he spins around Adam Crane.
Adam Crane, he loops it all by himself. He's going to slip down 2 positions, and you can see he also hit the inside wall there, Sumo, so front wing damage, and he's going to have to come down into pit lane the next time around. He couldn't have spun in a worse place because, well, now he's got to do the entire lap with that damage to the front wing.
Absolutely. Mid-Ohio may be a small circuit in relation, but it is properly long with the damaged front wing. Yet again, Arjuna, a similar case, getting on the power a bit too early. And Adam Crane, we saw Andreas Eichhardt in the pits at lap 23. Crane, I don't know what happened, he just got a bit too excited on the throttle, and I gets that position in very cleanly. So Adam Crane has it all to do now. He's not only on the wrong end of strategy, but his front wing's broken too. My goodness me, it's getting even tougher for him now.
And he's got a long way to go. He's still having to limp that car around right now. The car just doesn't want to turn and makes his way through the S's. He's just losing so much time right now. So one person who will be smiling is Hugo Olsen, but we'll jump back to Andreas Eichhardt. He's dived down onto pit lane and come out in front of the Swede. So Andreas Eichhardt now, Sumo, has moved himself up into P number 4. You know, once everything nets out with the pit strategy, that overcut definitely starting to come into play. And I think from the first pit stop here, we've already seen just how powerful it can be.
We have indeed, but it's not really the most representative because Hugo Olsen fell back quite a bit with his spin, so we could be seeing that sort of thing coming into picture as well. But it's all about Andreas Eichhardt trying to get his tires up to the right temperature as soon as possible. As we see what Andreas Eichhardt and Hugo Olsen getting past is the Hursignal driver Stefan Petrat coming out in front, and Andreas Eichhardt passes him for 3rd place, almost. They're going side by side and he gets it done, Arjuna. So the overcut not really paying off for Petrat.
Well, Petrat was really struggling right before, and he's still struggling on the cold tires right now. Hugo Olsen down the inside. I have to assume on the push to pass as well. He doesn't have many of them, but he's got to use them when he can. And Stefan Petrat, well, he's now slipped down from 3rd all the way to 5th place, and that spin, I think, really compromised the life of his tires there, Sumo. So that's what really just meant the overcut did not work out for one of the drivers there in that 3-car train.
It did not. Stefan Petrat in the wrong end of the field. Came out on fresh tires, came out in the back of the field. And tell you what, Arjuna, passing someone like Andreas Eichhardt and Hugo Olsen even if you have fresher tires, is a proper ask, mind you. That's going to be so much tricky for these guys, especially through the S's. This should be fun.
Yeah, and Stefan still has to wait for those tires to come up to temperature. You can see just how careful he's having to be around the last corners. But there you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, the reason why he lost so much time, Sumo, wasn't actually the overcut. He spent just about 2 seconds longer than the other guys in the pit lane. So he lost all the time in the pit lane, and unfortunately now he's just lost about 2 seconds as well as a result of having to come out on cold tires.
So what was that all about? I guess it was a longer fuel strategy, right? A longer fuel pit stop for him. So that sort of thing can come into picture. If you do not lift and coast enough, you may end up spending longer time in the pits trying to fill up enough fuel. So for Petrat, he's just on the wrong end of the strategy thing. He has to get back on track with the fresher tires, trying to hope that it comes into temperature as soon as possible. And in these iRacing Indy cars, it is a properly hard thing to do. Even though you have 700 horsepower rail wheel drive, it is still so tricky to get your tires up to the optimal temperature.
Well, if you throw in the inclusion of the push-to-pass, add in another 60 horsepower to that as well, so it becomes that much more tricky. But speaking of the push-to-pass count, well, Hugo Olsen, he's down to 3 left for the remainder of this race, Subal. It's going to be a lot of struggle here. If we jump over to Andreas Ike, you can see, well, he's only used 3 of his 10, so he's still got 7 to play with, and that's definitely going to be helpful later in this race.
Oh, that's definitely going to be so helpful. We mentioned earlier on Hugo Olsen trying to be very impatient in getting back all the positions he lost with that early first lap mistake. He's on the charge yet again, on the tail of Andreas Ike Jr., heading into turn 4. What's going to happen now?
He took a look, but then thought better of it. I don't think he was on the push-to-pass there, was just using the benefit of the draft, but I think right now maybe Sumo's starting to think about the long game again. He saw some of these cars make the overcut work, I think, but maybe he's just trying to save a little bit of fuel, save the tires to maybe hold on to this stint that little bit longer. There is a little bit more flexibility than there can be in other races in iRacing. It's not just a hard and cut 2 stops. You really can play around with how much fuel you're taking at all times, so there is a lot of strategy element to be played here.
There is indeed. All these things can come into picture. Fuel, pit stop, tires, everything will come into picture as we see Hugo Olsen going down the inside. Nice and smooth. The Swede gets the position in.
Yeah, down into turn number 1. Very easy. Hugo Olsen going for the move, and Andreas Ike choosing not to really fight that too much. And interestingly there, I don't think that was a push to pass, so maybe Andreas Ike just lighting up the rear tires a little bit too much, and already you can see the gap that Hugo Olsen's trying to pull if you jump on board. Well, interestingly, Sumo, no push-to-pass being used.
Interesting indeed. Hugo Olsen doing that all on his merit. It's almost like you've released a caged animal, and all of a sudden you see him going wild and going rampant and trying to get things done for himself. He's in P4 right now. That's a good place for him to be in. He can close up to Cesar Manzato and the rest, but Arjuna at the top. Chris Aoun has not let him go. Again, Aoun in second place, and you've got to get a feeling that he's being very consistent with his run. But Christian Steele at the top, very calm, very cool. It is Aoun with the fastest lap so far, but Steele just keeping things nice and easy. Steely nerves, you could say.
Steely nerves indeed, and Cesar Manzato has just come down into the pit lane from 3rd position, so everyone on track, I do believe, will have pitted at this point. And what does that mean? Well, Christian Steele continues to lead there. You can see the lap gaps. So the gaps stabilize at around 2 seconds. Then you look back to 3rd place, Hugo Olsen. He's 20 seconds behind Subal, so there's a long way to go. These two really are proving to be the class of the field. And I know that Christian Steele has recently started doing some coaching in this car. And Chris Aoun, he's a road specialist, Sumo, as he encounters some lap traffic in front of him. It's holding him up, going to get out of the way, fortunately, through Thunder Valley. But Chris Aoun, a road specialist, is now starting to look into the oval side a little bit more with the help of the driver leading this race, who he is battling, Christian Steele out front.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Outside the track, these guys may be the best of friends, but when it comes to the circuit, all these friendships come aside. These drivers just turn on a different level, a different element when they get on the circuit, and all these friendships do not matter. But yeah, Christian Steele doing a tremendous job at the top. The thing with Chris Aoun, though, Arjuna, he did a superb job at Road America. He did a superb job at Detroit Belle Isle as well. The question is, what can he do right now? He's got a consistent gap in 2nd place. Trust me, that's not a very bad place for him to be in. But as we know, racing drivers, that ego issue always kicks in. They always want to be first. I got told something by Mr. Dilbagh here, he's the team principal of Mahindra Racing. And this is not something that I should say normally, but he said racing drivers are the most selfish people in the world. I wanted one rather tricky word right there, but that's what happens, right? They all want things in their favor. And for Chris Ayon in the end, P2 is not bad, but he always wants that P1, that top spot, the ultimate place for him to be in. And he's chasing right now for that slot right now as well.
Yeah, gap's up to around 3 seconds due to that traffic. He does have the fastest lap, like you say, and something that I was just thinking back to the Road America race. We saw him have the race pace advantage over everyone on track, Sumo, but he was not out in front in qualifying. And in fact, I think he qualified back in 6th or 7th as well. So yeah, he wasn't near the front, or he was in the top 3 this time, but once again out qualified. And, you know, maybe that race pace is where his strength has been, but, you know, it's to this point so far, they've been fairly equal. I mean, they've been trading lap times back and forth, and I think it's really been the traffic factor that's built up this gap so far.
It really has. Managing your traffic right here is going to be as important as managing your traffic at a circuit like Indy 500. That's what happens, right? It's such a tight and twisty course that getting out of the way is going to be so hard. When you compare the same thing to, say, something like the Indy 500 on a quick oval, you have to get past as well, but you have the advantage of the apron. Here, not so much. It's all very serpentine, all very S's-like that you see in the second and third section. So getting away is going to be so critical. And just that lap traffic, it can completely wreck up your race. Just ask Andreas Heik for that matter.
We jump back to this battle as well because it's fairly close still here, Sumo. You can see Stefan Petrat starting to apply a little bit more pressure to Andreas Heik now. Hugo Olsen just starting to check out a little bit more. And in fact, sorry, Sumo, we have an incident because Jason Wallet has gone around and he's off the track and coming back on safely. Fortunately, no one around. That's going to be a safe rejoin. Here comes the replay up on your screen.
So what has happened right here? I can imagine it's going to be something related to oversteer. For Jason Wallet, it is indeed going downhill. Same thing, Arjuna. I think he's the third driver to be caught out by the very same oversteer downhill kind of factor. Thankfully for Jason, no major damage on the car, but that'll be some slightly flat spotted front tires.
Yeah, it will be indeed, and he's still out on track. They're coming around the last corner. He's now running in 19th place. Matt Houston is behind him, and you can see him at the back of his shot. Well, fortunately, Matt Houston a further 2 laps down, so it's not nice to be the second last car running on track, but at least Sumo, he doesn't have to worry about anyone from behind really putting too much pressure on him right now.
It just depends on your perspective in the end. He can be sitting and thinking, oh, come on, second last for me. Or he could just be thinking, hey, 3 laps of mid-Ohio sports car course. What could possibly go wrong? It all depends on how things play out for him in the end. But Adam Crane, Arjuna, P8 for him. Cesar Manzato, after that pit stop, has cycled back in P7. So Crane, in the last stint, from the looks of things, didn't really have the pace advantage. He does seem to be closing up this gap to Manzato. So let's see how this one plays out towards the end.
Yeah, last time around, he chipped off 8/10 off the gap, and I mean, that gap, Sumo, now 7/10 of a second. So Adam Crane looking to come back through the field after losing it on his own. Required 5 extra seconds on the pit lane to get the front wing repaired, and you can see in front as well, Vito Wallen is leading this 3-car battle pack with the 18 car. That's Radix Sioker, who we saw have his own issue, having to stay wide now and let the laps cars go. But this is an opportunity for one of the championship contenders to fight with another championship contender, Sumo, because Cesar Manzato in the 1 car is also in that top 4 hunt.
He really is. We are seeing Manzato being quite a consistent driver. He's had a few offs here and there, but on the whole, Manzato has been at the very forefront of this championship. What's going to be so much fun to watch is how he battles out against Adam Crane. When you see championship contenders, say in the world of Formula 1, when you see Lewis Hamilton fighting it out against Valtteri Bottas, or when you have an IndyCar, the likes of Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi going wheel to wheel, that is the stuff you actually tune in to watch in the world of motorsport. So when you have someone like Adam Crane fighting someone like Cesar Manzato, that, folks, is a proper iRacing IndyCar classic.
And somewhere on track, Stefan Petrat has managed to sneak by Andreas Heik, and I'm trying to just bring up the replay now, but I wonder if Andreas Heik has made a mistake. But here we come. No, now it's down the back straight and all over the back wing there, and very easily down the inside into turn number 4. Team Highschool driver Sumo starting to make his way back through the field, and this is the type of passing that he really needs.
And that was done at a very bold place indeed for Stefan Petrad. We can take a look at the replay. Here he comes. Oh, that was a look at the replay, I beg your pardon. So Petrad currently in P4, chasing Hugo Olsen. My apologies for that slight goof up right there, but the good thing is not Petrad. With clean air in front of him, as you can see on the screen, he can just exploit the setup from this car, trying to extract the maximum pace possible, going for some proper hot laps, and then see where that takes him, because Hugo Olsen, Arjuna, not too far off indeed.
Yeah, and while we were looking at that battle, there's another pass that happened on track. It was Adam Crane getting past Cesar Manzado in the exact same place and down the inside as well. Hard on the brakes into turn number 4, and Adam Crane, he was defending hard at the start of the race, now having to be a little bit more offensive and proving to be just as strong, Sumo, getting it done in that corner.
That's a rather tough place to get things done for yourself, but we are seeing drivers being very daring indeed, making things happen for themselves, putting their nose in the right place, and having enough confidence and seeing the moves being done. So, what are we looking at this stage? So, we have Christian Steele still leading. The gap is quite decent to Corseon, around 3.6 odd seconds. Then around, 17 odd seconds behind Arjuna is Hugo Olsen. Then we've got Stefan Petrad, and only 9 tenths behind him is Andreas Eick. So that could be one battle to watch out for. Adam Crane is also closing up to Wilder Warland, so that is for P6, ladies and gentlemen. That could be getting very close very soon indeed. But from the looks of things, again, Arjuna, Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, not exactly the easiest place to pass, but thankfully the drivers are getting moves done for themselves.
Yeah, well, we jump back to the battle between Wilder Warland and Adam Crane because Stefan Petrad continues to pull away from Andreas Eick, but Adam Crane sees position number 6 up for grabs in front of him. This will be an opportunity to just claim one more spot, get back towards the 3rd position he held once in this race. And, you know, Sumo, when you make mistakes like that all on your lonesome, it can sometimes be difficult to be just put that to the back of your mind and get focused with the job at hand. But he's done a very good job at that, seemingly used those 5 extra seconds in the pit lane to just calm down and get back under focus here.
That is such an underappreciated factor. As Racesport TV's very own Will Winston will say, if you make a mistake, leave it. Leave that aside. Focus on what's going to come up next. And that is something that Adam Crane seems to be doing quite well. He's got a penchant for good recovery drives, and he is doing quite a similar thing right here at Mid-Ohio. That's a very good point that you mentioned, Arjuna, in the pit lane. Those 5 seconds could have a huge impact on calming him down. And at a circuit like this one, where you're coming in from one corner to the other, immediately after one another, that sort of thing can really help him calm down and get a very good second stint in this race. All that aside though, he's facing some lap traffic, and while that's happened, Hugo Olsen has put in the fastest lap of this race, a 1 minute 7.064. No hocus pocus for him, it's pure focus right now.
And that, Sumo, was 0.5 of a second faster than the previous fastest lap of the race. So, I mean, this is where I think we have to go back to thinking about the strategy, because we'll go back to that battle very, very quickly. I just want to bring up a graphic here. You'll see the stint length for Hugo Olsen, 17 laps. We'll jump back to that battle because Adam Crane is one of the most recent cars to come down into pit lane. Sumo, there's a 5-lap difference there, and we've been talking about the strength of the overcut. There's also that much less fuel that you have to put in the car, so there's still a lot of strategy as Wilder Warland goes around, and Adam Crane able to get out of the way in time. But this race is all kicking off right now.
It really is drama every single place. Now Adam Crane going on the grass. That sort of thing can happen so easily. So here comes Crane. Wilder Warland spins around. Crane gets distracted, goes into the grass himself, keeps it clean. But my goodness, that could have been so horribly wrong.
Yeah, and there you can see from the nose cam, it was such a lazy spin towards the end, and Adam did a very good job to not spin on the grass there as well. And fortunately, he's held on to the 6th place. Cesar Manzado has closed the gap behind a little bit, but fortunately for him, he's now got a stranglehold on P number 6 with Andreas like 16 seconds down the road. Well, the end of the race now for Adam Crane. It's simple, just keep it clean, Sumo, get it to the end.
Keep it clean, get it to the end, and hold every single opportunity with both your hands, because you never know how many more opportunities could be coming your way. So capitalizing on each of them is going to be critical. So for Crane, losing a bit of time right there, but if he can calm himself down yet again and get back on the very same momentum that he was only a few laps ago, you could be seeing a good result ending up his way.
Still quite a long way to go. We've just ticked over the halfway point of the race, Sumo, so got that one pit stop still to go. Let's take this opportunity to go for race spot fan immersion. Let's jump on board with your race leader, Christian Steele, and ride on board for a lap or two of Mid-Ohio. That was a lap and a half on board with your race leader. Let's take this opportunity, just review the top 8 right now as they run, and it is Christian Steele who leads by just under 3 seconds from the Australian Chris Aon, with Hugo Olsen 20 seconds behind, trying to run away from Team Heiskenveld driver Stefan Petrat. Andreas Eich runs in P number 5 with Adam Crane, in P number 6 with Cesar Manzado and Vilda Wallen scrapping it out for 7th and 8th right behind. But Sumo, we've got 28 laps to go here still, and based on what we've seen so far, really anything could still happen. The gap out front still hovering around 3 seconds, and if anything happens here in traffic, it really could just present itself for Chris Aon to take the race win here.
Indeed, but the best part, Arjuna, Christian Steele on the last lap sitting in a personal best. That's a green sector lap for him, a 1 minute 7.372, and he was the only person apart from Cesar Manzato to put in a personal best in the last lap. So although traffic can catch him out, Christian Steele on the charge, but here he is right now finding a bit of traffic that will just allow Chris Aon to come back in the race for this one. But you've got to say, Steele has been inch perfect so far.
The nerves of Steele so far. He hasn't put a foot wrong. He's definitely been much more clinical in the traffic than I was maybe expecting. He had talked about having issues earlier this week, and I was maybe expecting a little bit more tentativeness from him, but driver who's been putting up setups online on the forums, and we'd like to encourage everyone who's watching, if you want to jump into this car, head over onto the Dallara IR18 sub-forum of the iRacing forums, and you'll find a bunch of new setups being posted there, and I believe Christian's running them, and I'm going to knock on all the wood I can around me here, Sumo, but right now on course for a podium interview right now. I think it's great to maybe talk to him about these setups, because we were talking about it at the start of the race, the road setups not necessarily as important to the pace as compared to the driver itself.
Yes, indeed, and the road setups, it's all about trying to find a comfortable one, the one that really works for you. But Arjuna, the traffic, it has just shut down. The gap, it was 3 seconds now, it's only around 2 seconds in a matter of a couple of minutes. So it's all closing up right here. Chris Aon is maximizing his traffic abilities, and Christian Steele very, very soon is going to be under pressure. That is when his ability to make the best setups all becomes irrelevant. It's all about keeping Chris Aon at the back. And from experience, I can tell you, that is something hard to do, because we've seen time and again in these iRacing IndyCar races, when Chris Aon gets going, he's a hard nut to crack.
And there you can see he's on the push to boss. He's trying to just use that 60 extra horsepower to gain a little bit more time. The gap now under 1.5 seconds. Hard braking into turn number 5. That little increased speed. He's just having to scrub that off right now. And oh, he touches the curb and gets a little bit loose. That's going to cost him a little bit of time. Watch the gap go up to about 1.6 seconds, I do believe. There you go, 1.6 exactly. Sumo, he's pushing hard right now, and he knows with 10 laps to go till the end of his pit window, this is an opportunity now to close the gap and see if maybe he saved a little bit of fuel potentially.
Yes, indeed. Chris Ayon going hell for leather. He can almost... Can he see Hugo Olsen? No, he can't really see Hugo Olsen from... not Hugo Olsen, I beg your pardon. Steele from this angle. Yeah, he is completely on the charge. What can he get done from this stage? Because as you mentioned, Arjuna, on the charge he is trying to make the best of this stint, trying to maximize his pace, trying to go for some proper qualifying laps. Christian Steele, though, being very calm indeed, keeping things nice and clean at the top. How is this one going to play out when we head to the pit stop strategy? That's going to be fun, as Ayon can finally see his target.
And we do have the first take before the last stop of the race. It is Hugo Olsen who leads this championship right now. And this is what we're talking about, Sumo, with the overcut for this last stint. Because not only are they going to have the pace advantage on track, we'll see the stop. It's about 9 seconds in the box. I'm not expecting some of the drivers who come down in 10 laps time to need that much fuel.
Exactly, that's going to be a huge factor coming in. Hugo Olsen, of course, going in very early, made that early pit stop to try and recover from that mistake on the first lap. So he's going to be on a different approach to the other guys to keep a keen eye on how he plays out towards the end. But for the other guys, yes, it's going to be a lot more simpler. They won't have to save as much fuel as, say, Hugo Olsen would have to. Now, though, Arjuna, he's in a bit of a dilemma. Does he attack? Does he attack and try to get as many positions as he can? Because we see Adam Crane right in front of him. Or does he go behind and save and make sure that he ends up towards the finish line? Because on one side he has the temptation to go for it, trying to attack Adam Crane and get that position in for himself. But he can't do that because otherwise, who knows, he probably may not be able to finish the race without an extra pit stop.
He should definitely be good on fuel, I do believe. 24 laps or so is well within the fuel window. The question more here, Sumo, is the amount of time, because the gap to Stefan Petrat was obviously around 4 or 5 seconds when he came down onto pit lane, and now behind Adam Crane. If he loses time here and had to get all his tires up to temp and pressure, he's got the extra weight of the fuel on board. If he's slower right now, that gap's going to be chipped away at, and got the extra factor of that Stefan is only going to need, let's say, 20, maybe 14 laps of fuel if he's lucky. So there's still a lot of strategy to play out here, and maybe Hugo Olsen, if he catches up to Adam Crane, is going to have to take a look. We'll jump back, though, just for a sec to the battle for the race lead. Christian Steele's just come out of turn number 1 again, and the gap has been stable now. They're in some clean air, Sumo, and there you can see 1.8 seconds last time around, basically matching lap times, and it's proving to be a fairly even battle here now.
Absolutely. These guys are just matching each other. Anything you can do, I can do better. That is what the motto is for both of these guys. Doing a superb job at the very top of this field. But Arjuna, one point I'd like to bring into question for Hugo Olsen. Because he's got more fuel, because this car is slightly heavier, you kind of expect him to have a better center of gravity because the car is lower down, it's heavier. That can help him be a bit more stable. But because you've got more fuel on board, the car will not be as nimble to turn in. So that's one thing that Hugo Olsen will have to adapt in his driving style, that the car being slightly heavier on, it can give him some better mid-corner grip, but not so much commitment on the entry.
That is a good point indeed. Something just to think about, as now Vilde Wallin has also jumped onto the pit lane for their final stop of the race. Some more takers for the second and final stop. The gap, though, out front now just slowly increasing, because the last time around, well, Christian Steele, he saw the gap last time and decided he's going to do the same thing. I'll bring the graphic up on the screen right now, and well, actually I'm waiting for it to try and update, because sometimes it likes to play games with us here, Sumo. And yeah, it's getting a little bit stuck, but I can tell you guys, less than a tenth of a second. In fact, the gap was about the same as you see on lap 44. Just switch the minus for a plus.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is that Andreas Eich is in the pit lane right now, and Christian Steele is clocking in lap times very, very close indeed to his personal best. So Christian Steele, he may have to be facing with the pressure of having someone like Chris Ayon at the back, but still his lap times are immaculate as ever.
Yeah, and you pull up the track map so you can see Andreas Eich. He's going to come out in relatively clean air. The 16 car of Christopher Block is in 14th place, a few laps down, so not going to pose too much of an issue there. And this is going to be very important in this final phase of the race now, Sumo, because some of these drivers, especially your leading two, if they decide to come in at opposite laps potentially, they need to come in on a lap when they can come out in clean air.
Oh, indeed. We have seen so many times in the last 47 laps that when you encounter traffic, you can easily lose around, what, 3-4 tenths of a second in a matter of moments, within the blink of an eye, in fact. And when the battle is so hotly contested, you simply do not want to do that. That is the last thing you actually want to help out with your race. And it can just damage you so bad, as we are seeing. Is that better than the Hurstingfeld car in the pit lane?
It is indeed.
It is, yeah.
And I am now waiting to see what happens with Hugo Olsen. There is Hugo Olsen coming around the start-finish line. He's already passed. He's going to be well and truly past, because Stefan Petrad, in fact, with a longer stop than Hugo Olsen. So, unfortunately for the Heiskeveld driver, the strategy just did not work out for him there, Sumo. And he might actually now start to look behind, because you can see Andreas Seid behind in the mirrors as well.
Absolutely, it's all gone wrong for him, but good for him though. He's got fresher tires. The question is, how much more can he close in, because Hugo Olsen seems to be disappearing in the distance. If he can close a gap quite like that one, I'll be amazed.
Yeah, Hugo Olsen really putting himself in a strong position here. He's now closed up to the back of Adam Crane as well, and Adam Crane will be down on the pit lane in just a few laps time. We'll jump back then though, Sumil, to the battle for the race lead, because there's a lot of battles happening on track right now, but this is the one that's not only the closest, it's for the race lead. And I think what we're going to see here is one of these guys blink first and come into pit lane that one lap earlier and just try and do something slightly differently here.
Yes, indeed, but the big question is not going to be overcut or undercut. The big question is going to be who gets clean air. It may be the driver with the overcut who gets the clean air. It may be one with the undercut who gets the clean air in the end. We never know how that one's going to play out. So the battle for the lead very much still on. When are they going to blink? That's the question, and he does. Chris Ayon does. The driver from second place comes into pit road, and this, Arjuna, is where Steele has to put in the lap of his life.
I don't like to toot my own horn sometimes, Sumo, but, I mean, we did call that up here at the RaceSpot TV booth. We expected one of these drivers to try something different, and it's the driver in second place up onto the jacks right now. You can see the time on the pit lane right now standing at 20 seconds. The total stop, 9.2, so another longer stop, in fact, and something just to be curious about is Hugo Olsen still with a shorter stop than that, but Chris Ayon back into track. He's got a car coming up behind that he's going to be clearer of, though, Sumo. Jesper Orman in the 15 machine just going through the keyhole as well, so there's a little bit of lap traffic, but I think right now Chris Ayon, he's come out in some clean air, get those tires up to temperature and pressure as quickly as you can, and see what you're able to do from here.
And for Christian Steele, it's all about putting in a very good fine lap, trying to see how he can get that one in. Again, where your tires, older tires for him, hopefully that isn't going to be as big of a factor. Wait, Arjuna, he's not coming in. So Christian Steele unusually going in slightly longer, so these guys are not hell-bent on trying to match each other. Maybe Steele has different ideas in mind.
Well, we've talked about the overcut being so strong, and I think Christian Steele is committed to the overcut now. He's on the 24th lap of his stint, so maybe 2 laps to go here. And we saw just how careful the Australian was having to be on the cold tires, and just maybe, Sumo, that's what we're seeing here, is the fact that Christian Steele thinks that he's able to just go a little bit longer here, pull out the gap to maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds. And then maybe once he comes out of the pit lane, he'll have 1 lap or 2 laps where he's a little bit slower, but that increased gap is what he needs, and we'll see what happens here, Sumo.
Yeah, till that time, normally you can think that he'll just have to tiptoe his way around with older tires, trying to manage everything and trying to manage traffic as well. Thankfully for him, no traffic at all. It's all in clean air, so Steele can go in and put in some very good laps. But those older tires will be starting to come into picture very, very soon. And guess what, Arjuna? The leader is in the pit lane. Keep your eyes closely on the timing screen. This, folks, is going to be fun.
Yeah, you'll see the track map there, bottom right-hand corner, and someone on our chat is saying that Steele should have told Chris that the overcut is OP. Well, unfortunately, guys, you got to try something here. You can't just sit back and wait for the race to pass you by. Chris is trying to make something happen, and as unlikely as it may be, the stop's even shorter from the Californian, 8.2, and you see the gap there, Sumo. I think it's going to be something like 6 seconds once it's all said and done.
Exactly, so Steele still comes out in the lead. Now it's a proper dash to the finish. Who's going to get the P1? Who's going to get the top? And who's going to go into victory lane? That is the question that we're all trying to answer. Ewan has been there or thereabout. He's been, what, 3.5 seconds behind right now. But we can tell you with confidence that when Christian gets going, he gets going rather quickly.
And there's no strategy for him to play now like at Road America. Now it's just pedal to the metal and see what happens. We'll jump back to the battle for 5th and 6th because Stefan Petrat has got Andreas like all over him right now. And this is going to play out for net 4th position once Cesar Manzado comes down to pit lane. So there is something to play for here, and Andreas Ike has managed to close up the gap, Sumo.
Andreas Ike has indeed. You can see him in his mirror. If you're someone like Petrat, you would be thinking, oh boy, this is gonna get rather dirty. So what can happen right here? Andreas Ike has, what, 17 odd laps to get his move done. What he can really do is put his visor down, trying to get the best laps that he possibly can without making sure that his tires are chewed up too much. Maybe just lifting and coasting through the S's just that a little bit to try and make sure that the tires are fine and getting on the throttle at the right time. So he's closing up Arjuna. The draft on the back stretch is going to be critical as lap traffic is putting Petrat in the wrong place, and now Ike is on his gearbox.
And what a fantastic camera shot that is. You can just feel the undulation as the car rises and falls with the crests of the track. And you're right, Carlos Ruiz in front is really holding them up, and there's a car coming out of the pit lane as well. Fortunately, it's one of the 3 Crowns Racing machines is going to stick well out of the way, but Carlos Ruiz in the 17 finally gets to the outside as they get down into the keyhole. But now Andreas Ike is right on the back here, and we're not sure exactly how many push-to-passes each of these drivers still has. It's 5 for Andreas Ike, about 17 laps still to go, and this is where, see, what we talked about Hugo Olsen not having that many push-to-passes to use. Well, he's in clean air. He doesn't really have to now battle with anyone, so the strategy has worked out for him in that regard. But if you're Andreas Ike, you'd be feeling pretty glad now to have saved the majority of these, 60 extra horsepower little bursts that you get.
And that on the back straight is going to be such a huge factor. Now, that said, Mid-Ohio isn't exactly the most push-to-pass sensitive circuit in the world. It's very corner-oriented. It's all about how you get your car done through the corners, through the turns. That's where you gain all your lap time. But those 60 horsepower bursts can be quite important, especially, Arjuna, in the first sector. We've got a very fast turn 1. It's almost flat out. Then you come up to the keyhole, then to the long back straight. This is where Ike has the upper hand. This is where the push-to-pass comes in handy. And this is where you can see moves being made.
This is where you see the slightly differing lines. The number 5 choosing to run a little bit wider compared to the number 2 car. Much, much tighter to the apex of the corner. And you can see the extra momentum that the Team Heiskenveld IndyCar was able to carry out of the corner. Right now, though, the gap just proving to be a little bit too much for Andreas to overcome. Getting a little bit too much dirty air through turn number 1, it looks like. And it's going to be something he's just going to have to find a way around. You do have open setups and adjustability in these cars, Sumo, and the advantage on these road courses is you might not have the weight jacker to move the weight across the nose and the axis of the car is what I'm trying to say, but you do have the ARBs front and rear, and that can really help just dial in the car that little bit more.
No, that's a very good point that you mentioned, Arjuna. Normally, IndyCar drivers, well, they can't really do things quite like that. And you want to have that advantage. You want to be able to fluctuate the weight of the car to put it to your advantage. But the other case is, when you don't really have an assist quite like that one, it's all on your driver's skill to manage the weight balance. And weight balance is such a critical thing. Again, just ask the engineers at Porsche. What they try to do is have a perfect amount of balance between the front and the back. You don't want too much at the front so that the front end won't just turn in. And you don't want a very light front end as well, because then the car will just be skittering out all the place and you won't be able to control it. So you just want that perfect balance when the front turns in the way you want to and the rear sticks around when you exit the corner. And that for these guys has to be done manually, driving the way they possibly can, trying to brake at the right places, trying to accelerate at the right times, and trying to make sure that the car is flat as ever, even in the undulations. Because if that isn't, well, the weight balance may just be, well, oopsie daisy, you could say, that's the right word. It can just go hunky-dory and your car could end up sliding out of control.
It can indeed, and we'll take another look at the battle for the race lead. It's just extending a little bit more as traffic comes and goes, and right now Christian Steele's got a little bit more clean air than Chris Aon does. Chris Aon just having to work through the traffic after Christian Steele gets there, and I think right now what's happening, Subal, is Christian's catching them in all the right places, and Chris is getting a little bit more dirty air as compared to what Christian's having to deal with.
And that dirty air, Arjun, as we spoke earlier on, is going to be such a key factor, because the air wash, when you come to a tough, tricky corner, the section like the S's, the dirty air can just make your car understeer, as Niki Lauda would say, like a pig. And driving a car like that one, you're just losing so much time. As you can see, Christian Steele gaining time on Chris Aon, and someone get a feeling that that dirty air might have a huge hand in this to play for.
It could indeed, and we're now less than 10 laps to go as well, so everyone has had their final stops now, and it's all just about the sprint to the finish, Sumal. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, because I think it's fairly clear, in my opinion, that Christian Steele has got one hand on the trophy at the end of this now. Do you think there's anything that the Australian is going to be able to do from second place?
Well, if there's anything he can do, he can just be himself, because Chris Aon, as we have seen time and again, is a phenomenal driver. We saw in Road America as well, that last gasp final stint, he just went hell for leather, trying to push out all out, trying to extract everything from the car, everything that the Dallara IR18 has to offer. If he can do something similar today, he could have his hands on the trophy. But tell you what, Arjuna, even with that done, and that is a level that's very hard to achieve, Steele has just been rock hard to pass. He has just been perfect. I don't want to jinx it, but he has not put even a single foot wrong. And even though you give your best at times, when you have a driver, say like Steele, doing what he is doing at the top, that becomes very hard, as we are seeing an incident for Carlos Ruiz.
Yeah, and it's in the battle for the Carlos Ruiz class, and it is the leader, the number 17, down into turn number 4. He lost it all by himself, but fortunately, his only other competitor, Carlos Ruiz 4, is already a lap down, Sumal, so no harm, no foul here in what is one of the most entertaining classes in the field.
Well, oh my goodness me, the Carlos Ruiz category is, well, getting rather spicy. That's the only thing I can say. And full props to that rather spicy livery that we've got here. Looks a bit like a popsicle, but he kept it clean. Full kudos to him for not getting on the grass and damaging the car a bit too much. You might be seeing a couple of flat spots on the tires, but hey, it doesn't matter when you're so far back. So for Carlos Ruiz, the first, it's going to be a big learning this Mid-Ohio IndyCar race for him. Trying to get as much as he can from this one and trying to use it in all his different races. But it's good to see two Carlos Ruizes battling it out for some good positions here tonight. It's actually taking us away from the battle for the lead, Arjuna, which has rather stagnated. So it's good to see more action throughout the field indeed.
Yeah, and he's right behind Connie Nasland right now. So there are battles, like you say, happening up and down. And you mentioned the liveries there. It's a good opportunity. Just briefly mention racebot.media, the new site where you can submit your liveries for this series. All the liveries you're seeing on your screen right now are uploaded to that site. So if you're not seeing your livery, well, head on over to racebot.media, get it uploaded, and it'll be on the next broadcast in 2 weeks' time from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But in the meantime, we'll jump back to the battle for 4th and 5th, because it's stabilized pretty here at 1 second, Sumo. It's been like this for about 10 laps or so now. Because Stefan Petrat, he's been able to hold off Andreas Eichen. Andreas has not really used too much of his push to passes just yet, but you know, maybe he's just not able to really get even close enough to make them effective as a passing opportunity.
Yeah, that's what. The push to pass has just been one sort of a tool for him to just stay in contention. Because normally you use push to pass to get ahead, trying to get that extra advantage. For him, there just seems to be that unfortunate pace deficit, so that he's using it a bit like a method to just cling on, try to stay in the same place. That is a bit sad in the end, but hey, what can we do about that?
Well, all it takes is one mistake, and this is a very tough track, Sumo. We've seen cars get caught out, and there is no runoff area at all, so you really do get punished for your mistakes, so anything can still happen. You take a look at the top left corner of your screen, you'll see the battle for the top 3. It is between Christian Steele and Chris Aon, because Hugo Olsen, well, I mean, he's in the top 3 still, but 30 seconds behind, and 10 seconds clear of the battle on the screen right now. Well, the championship leader, he didn't have the most ideal turn number 1, but he's going to take home a very comfortable 3rd place, all things considered. It's an important race, given that, like we said right off the bat, he's already used many of the drop weeks which he has available to him.
He has, in fact, and for Hugo Olsen on the whole, if he would have to look back, he would think and say, okay, I did the best that I possibly could. He went for a rather different strategy that nobody else did, went for the undercut, he went for some rather bold and brave moves. Again, a couple of mistakes here and there that compromised him, as we see this beautiful visor cam shot of the onboards. I think that's Andreas Hyde that we're riding on board with. And for Hugo Olsen in the end, P3, although he's 30 seconds behind, it's not a bad place for him to be in as the championship leader. That sort of a result for him can really establish a bit of confidence, and he will be sleeping well knowing that, okay, although I made a few mistakes, I ratcheted on, I capitalized on all of that, and I got a podium in the end. And if I was Hugo Olsen, I would be rather happy. But for Andreas Hyde, Arjuna, lovely camera angle that you found out right here. It's a proper gem, this one.
Yeah, the reason that I like to use this camera angle with Andreas specifically is I wish I had the yellow pen tool ready to go, Sumo, because you'll see, if you look at the right-hand side mirror there, can you see what's there? There's just a little image there, and that is Tanner Watkins.
Yeah.
That is Tanner Watkins, and Tanner used to run the Open Wheels 500, openwheels.com website, which hosted the Open Wheels 500, and while we're very sad to say that Open Wheels is no longer in its regular operations, Tanner has taken on a job at IndyCar, and we like to congratulate and wish him all the best. And it's always nice to be able to see that emoji pop up in some unique places, Subal, and I wonder if Andreas is just getting reminded at times that his overlord in Tanner is always watching, and he's got to get the hammer down right now.
Well, that's a good way to put it forward, Arjuna. He can just look at the right wheel arch and say, oh boy, I've got to get my act together. Got to get my act together, I beg your pardon. And that is what he seems to be doing right now. He's closing up to Petrad. Not close enough to make a move, it seems. But yeah, when he needs inspiration, look to the right wheel arch, and there you have it.
He's about half a second back, so gap definitely has been just coming down right now, and just like just putting in some consistent lap times. That's all he can do right now is hope for a mistake. Just put the pressure on at this stage. What we can do is just jump back to the battle for the race lead. It is stabilized again, the gap just under 3 seconds, and well, the Team i5G driver just doing what he needs to do right now, Sumo. I don't think he's trying to push too hard. He's cognizant that Chris is a very fast driver. He also knows that the easiest way for him to lose this race right now would likely be to take himself out of it. So all he's got to do is make his way through this traffic without any major incident, and he'll be looking pretty good towards the end.
Absolutely, but that's a very tough thing to do, Arjuna. In those high-pressure situations, you normally just think, okay, it's nice cruise towards the end, I can relax, enjoy the circuit. But that is when you're most prone to making a mistake, because that is where you can actually lose your concentration and make that one critical error that can have a significant impact on the race. So for these guys, being on the charge, being very concentrated on their task is important, but they can just take a step back and relax, knowing that the gaps are slightly cleaner. Tell you what, Arjuna, one man who can't relax is Chris Ayon, because here he is in second place still. This with around 6 laps to go, he needs a rather special effort to get up to Christian Steele, who seems to be just cruising at the way right now.
Yeah, that lap traffic really didn't aid his cause, and I love this camera angle, Sumo, because you really get a sense of just how much undulation there is in this track, and it's not just through the corners, even here through the straight. Watch as it falls and rises as you head throughout it. It's such a interesting track, and as we head towards this S's section right now, this is where you can really just let the car roll through the corners, and this is where the best drivers can just carry the car's momentum the most and just really thread the needle in many ways on managing the car's balance through each of these corners.
It's a proper driver's track. Mid-Ohio is a proper driver's circuit. Mastering the SS section. People take all their lives trying to master the SS section, trying to get the best of it. Again, if you're a good driver, you can maybe do it in a couple of races here and there, but it is so challenging to get your maximum pace out of. It's a circuit that I absolutely adore driving. It's a shame that I haven't been able to do much of this circuit early on leading up to this race, but yeah, once this is done, I'll surely be getting onto my simulator tomorrow and trying to get as many laps as possible, because driving here on its own is so much fun. Racing here It can get slightly processional, mind you, because passing opportunities are limited. But even driving on its own right here can just leave you with the biggest of smiles, as we are having the last 4 laps of this race coming to an end, Arjuna.
Yeah, and you know, it's a shame because I was really looking forward, Sumo, to a double header at this track this weekend. It must be such an interesting challenge for the drivers because I must assume, you know, double headers anyway take so much mental focus, but they're coming to a track like this. It may not be the most physical of circuits, but the mental challenge is always there. There's so much risk around each different corner. I'm just so sad that, unfortunately, you know, there's no rescheduled date for this event just yet. Right now, tentatively slotted for maybe September or October, but I'm just hoping that we'll get back to this track before the end of the year because like, it would be such a shame to not see it on the calendar for 2020.
Another person who will be very happy to see this track back on the calendar will be Scott Dixon, because last year fended off his rather pacey teammate Felix Rosenqvist on wearing tyres to take a very dramatic win. It's one of the very few IndyCar races that I was able to watch back in India, but what a race that was. And if we have the circuit back on track, Scott Dixon, as he is already in the momentum of winning so many races, he will just be elated.
Yeah, and I mean, what else? I mean, Scott Dixon, IndyCar legend, but I mean, he's won 6 races at this track, Sumo. Just to put that in perspective, I mean, that's crazy. 6 wins at a track like this where so much can happen, so much craziness can happen as well. It just really puts into perspective just how good he is and how consistently he's able to get the results. And, you know, you talk about consistency right now. Chris Aon, he's not getting the win, but he's always in and around the top 3 or top 4 on the podium in these road course races. And Christian Steele's proving to be a little bit too strong here today, but, you know, again, a very solid drive, almost like a Scott Dixon in many ways.
Almost like a Scott Dixon indeed. He's been so consistent, he's been so clean, very fast all the way through. And that has helped him secure this very good position that he has, with only a couple of laps left to go. And that just reminded me, Arjuna, of another world champion that we mentioned early on in the broadcast, Michael Schumacher. Remember the Magny-Cours circuit that we had in France? Very similar thing. It's a proper driver's circuit. Not many overtaking opportunities, with some very fast chicanes and some properly tight corners. Schumacher there, 7-time winner. Just like Scott Dixon at Mid-Ohio, some drivers just find their driver's circuits, find a way to excel at it, and give no opportunity to anyone else competing. And that, for Scott Dixon, is Mid-Ohio in a nutshell. Can Christian Steele make it somewhat similar for him in this iRacing IndyCar Series? Well, he certainly seems to be on the right footing right now.
And you know, Sumo, I was a little bit worried coming into this one that we might not necessarily see the type of field that we've gotten to see in this race. We've seen many of the drivers in the top 10 show up, and we've also been very happy to see drivers like Christian Steele and Chris Aon really shining and proving to us that this is a track that can put on a very entertaining race.
And it has done so far. I mean, towards the end it may just have tailed off, but when you look at all the incidents that we've seen early on today, some crashes, some superb overtakes, and a very bold strategy call from the likes of Hugo Olsen as well, it just shows out that a perfect package can be achieved even at a proper tight and twisty sports car circuit. Now though, it's all about what Andreas Eick might be thinking. What could have been? He's sitting behind in that position. There's a big gap, Arjuna, with only a lap left to go. It's just a perfect time for him to sit back, reflect, and think, yeah, you know, maybe if I just pushed it a bit too harder, I could have gotten that slot. But for him, though, not a very bad place to be in towards the end as well. So overall, quite a few drivers will be quite happy with how things have played out towards the end. And for Hugo Olsen, using all those push-to-passes early on, didn't really have a very bad effect in the end, did it?
And Andreas Eick still has 2 of his push-to-passes, so there is the potential, and you can see him on the button trying to just close the gap that little bit more, so there is still a potential for him to close. But we'll jump over to Hugo Olsen because, like you say, that strategy to use the push-to-passes aggressively at the start after his turn 1 incident maybe just showed the mindset he was in. He was being aggressive. He wanted to get back to the front, qualified in 2nd place, and well, he's running in 30 seconds behind the leader, Sumo, but I think more importantly, getting the type of points that he's going to need in what is a very strong field, as Christian Steele has already started the final lap of this race. Yeah, he will be indeed, and Now jump to Christian Steele because he does take the race win. There he goes across the start-finish line, 68 laps. He controlled the entire race, and while Sumo, the Team I5G driver, there's not much you could say other than just complete domination here at Mid-Ohio.
That is very good. And that is a properly good drive by Christian Steele. Coming in and beating a veteran of the series like Chris Aoun, that takes a lot of effort, but boy has he done it well today.
Yeah, he really had to work for it, and just watching the timing screen, and most of the positions seem to have stayed fairly constant. So Andreas Light going to come home behind Stefan Petrat, and Chris Aoun going to go around Christian Steele there. And you know, not much that Chris Aoun really could have done there, Sumo, because he didn't have the greatest qualifying performance, but once he got to the traffic, the gap just kind of opened up, and once that happened, there was not much he could do to really claw it back in.
Yeah, he just had to stay behind, try to do the best of his abilities. That he did, but as you mentioned, Arjuna, not much he could really do with that. So P2 will not be a bad place for him to finish, but I'm sure he would be thinking, maybe P1, maybe I could have gotten that chance, but for Chris Aoun, not a bad result, I must say, towards the end.
Just waiting for the final cars to come across the line. There you can see on your screen just some of them coming around turn number 1 for the final time today. I think with that, it's time to take a look at the final results here from Mid-Ohio. It's an entertaining race with action starting before we even got to the green flag. But Christian Steele for Team I5G takes the win from Chris Aoun. 2.3 seconds was the gap, with Powerslide Motorsports' Hugo Olsen coming in 33 seconds behind to complete the podium positions. Stefan Petrat gets 4th for Team Heiskenfeld, with Andreas Eick close behind, with Adam Crane coming in P number 6. And Cesar Manzado, the last car on the lead lap. So a lot of cars getting lapped here today. We'll scroll through the rest of your field. Vilda Wallen, Brendan Lichtenberg, Jesper Orman on the edge of the top 10. Then you got John Downing, Connie Nasland, Carlos Ruiz winning the Carlos Ruiz class there in 13th place. Robin Glennox, Christopher Block, Radix Yorker, Carlos Ruiz for Jason Wallet, Guillermo Diaz, Matt Houston. Final 2 cars then Daniel Manzano and David Soranzo, who we did see having that incident in the last corner before even getting to the green flag, in what is a terrible just news for his championship hopes there, Sumo.
Yeah, an incident like that can really jeopardize your entire championship. When you think about the fact how close this championship has been so far, and when you think about the fact that Hugo Olsen has been getting a P3 result today, that for him is a big blow. But on the whole, Arjuna, superb race at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah, it was a fantastic race, and we're going to take a short break here. There you can see Christian Steele and Brendan Lichtenberg, Team I5G teammates, just celebrating this win here. And we'll take a few minutes, show you some messages from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with the post-race show here from Mid-Ohio. Don't go anywhere. Coverage on iRacing Esports Network will continue right after this.
coming up to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side by side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead.
Down the back straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Loma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett low. 4 wide at the stripe. For all he's worth here on this outside line, neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron, drag race to the line. It's so close to call.
After 68 laps here at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Christian Steele from Team i5G came out on top in Sumil. What proved to be one of the funner races this season. A race that I really wasn't expecting in many ways. I thought it would be much more difficult to pass, but we saw action up and down the field throughout the race and may have turned in a bit more processional at the end, but nevertheless, it was still a fun race that I'm going to be hoping that we can get back here sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. When you normally think of Mid-Ohio, you tend to think of, okay, very tight, very twisty, lots of fun to watch, lots of fun to drive, I beg your pardon, but not the best track to race on. But thankfully today, Arjuna, the racing was superb. Hugo Olsen coming in with a very different strategy, coming in to finish P3 after a couple of incidents early on. And in the end, it just proved us that even though the track is tight and twisty, you can get a lot of incidents and you can have a lot of fun in a circuit like this one.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll take this time then to go over the race with some of your podium position finishers. We're just waiting to see if Hugo Olsen decides to join us up here in the booth, but we do have the race winner, Christian Steele, ready. And Christian, you were feeling fairly confident coming into this race, but you definitely controlled this one, and it went about as smoothly as you could have expected. How excited are you about taking home the win here today?
Yeah, I'm very excited. Yeah, that went really smoothly. I knew that I had to do two things, is qualify pole and then just try to run comfortably hard, so I could manage the gap, manage the tires, and really just keep everything under control. There was one instance with lap traffic where I almost had an incident, but other than that, it was pretty much smooth sailing for me. Chris definitely kept me honest though, because yeah, he's an incredible driver, and I was pretty much every lap was a qualifying lap there, but I really got into the zone, so it worked out.
Just talk to me a bit about that traffic, because we talked a bit earlier this week about how you actually were having some engine heating issues behind some of these guys when you got stuck behind them in some of the twistier parts as well. Just how difficult was it to stay patient knowing that Chris was behind you and could really pounce at any time?
I just I just tried to save my push to passes, and Zach Campbell was spotting me throughout that start of the race, and generally it seemed that when there was a guy that was giving you a hard time, I just had to keep in the back of the mind that that guy was probably going to give Chris just equally as hard of a time, and that did happen in quite a few instances. So yeah, we just had to stay patient, and I tried to push as hard as I could in the first sector of the track when I saw guys, because really there's no overtaking zones in the second or third spots of the track. So that's, really want to make your passes there so you don't get stuck, because, that's a second gone if it happens.
And so with this win now, we head to the home of speed in many ways in 2 weeks' time, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's all in the name, Team I5G, the Team Indy 500 group. Are you hoping that you can maybe get some more of your teammates to show up next week? Because I'm sure it will be a very strong run, and we saw Brendan Lichtenberg here today, but hopefully, we can see even more, maybe 4 or 5 cars from you guys entered next time out.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I know Chris Demerit will definitely run. Brendan will run. I'll probably run. So you'll definitely see a good showing from us. And we have an incredible car, especially in the hotter conditions. So it's only more of an incentive to go out and race.
Well, Christian, thanks for joining us. Congrats on the win. And who do you have to thank today other than your Team I5G teammates?
Yeah, everyone at the team, especially Zach. He was doing a really good job keeping me calm, and he gave me really good feedback on what we were doing with the setup this week. So he was really pivotal for my win, and also Brendan for just being able to show up and practice with me. That was a extra motivation. So especially those two guys, and you guys obviously for broadcasting the race.
Well, thanks for jumping up here, Christian, and we'll hope to see you in a few weeks' time from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Thanks, guys.
So that was your race winner, Christian Steele, and Alsumil Aurora is standing by with your second place finisher, Chris Ayon.
Chris, firstly, mate, congratulations on second place. How are you feeling? Do you feel like P1 could have been yours, or are you very satisfied with this result here today?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty satisfied. I felt like I could have probably pushed a little bit harder, but the car setup, the balance just wasn't really there for me today. Mid-Ohio, I tend not to do too well in, so I think overall I was destined for P2, to be honest. So I can't complain too much, I guess.
And how much more different was this one from the last road course race that we had at Road America? This one, of course, a lot more tight and twisty than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even like comparing it against Detroit, which was a hard track as well, this is just requires so much commitment around here to get a good lap in. Yeah, and I was just unable to do that today.
And, well, Chris, one very interesting thing that Arjuna has pointed out here, you were overcoaching with Steele himself, and Steele has ended up trumping you here today. So, next race, Indy 500, how are you planning to race that one, and what's the perspective like for old racing there?
With oval racing, did you say?
Yep.
Well, I'm still kind of getting to grips with oval racing, so I might do it. But yeah, if I do, I want to do it right. So I suppose just got to get as much practice in as possible and see how I go with that, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, is there anyone who you'd like to thank for your result here today?
Just the team, Rival Autosport. We work together. We try our best to, get a good setup as much as possible. So, yeah, big thanks to them. HRS, Hybrid Racing Simulations, for just with the direct drive wheel. Brett really does a good job with helping me out. So, yeah, thanks to all of them. And thank you guys.
Our pleasure, Chris. Well, hope to see you at Indy 500. It should be a fun one. And let's see how things can go over there.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak to Chris Ewan as always. He was our second place finisher here today. And with that, back to you, Arjuna.
Yes, though, Sumo, 68 laps here. Promised to be maybe a long and tedious slog at times, but yeah, definitely a fun one. And just trying to pull up onto your screen right now the upcoming schedule you'll see right there. So 2 weeks from now, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and we follow that up with another short oval at Gateway. Then we go up to Barber, Laguna Seca, and we finish it off with the Indianapolis Road Course. Very exciting final 5 rounds, and I'm hoping to see an updated championship standings shortly, but as far as I can think about this, Hugo Olsen has maybe just extended that lead a little bit out front, and we saw at the start, 4 drivers separated by under 100 points, so there's still a lot to play for.
There is a lot to play for indeed. If you just heard Chris Ewan speaking, you could get a sense that he wants to get more. He wants to attack for that one. And we have so many other drivers as well fighting for the championship. So heading into these final couple of rounds, it should be a lot of fun to watch, especially when you've got the Indy 500 coming in. That, Arjuna, is going to be wild.
Yeah, well, fortunately, at least for our voices in the commentary booth, it won't be the full-length race. It'll be slightly shorter, but I'm sure it's still going to be very fun. The addition of dynamic weather, which, if you're not familiar, the iRacing Indy 500 actually uses static weather to allow for that qualifying format the entire week, which, trust me, is a whole nother debate that you can get into on the iRacing forums. But with that said, it's going to be it from us here up in the RaceBot TV booth. Thank you for joining us on the iRacing Esport Network for another broadcast of the IndyCar iRacing Series. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, like we say, from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, I've been joined in the commentary booth by Sumil Arora. As always, our cam packs are done by Istvan Ballo from TrackCams22. But we'll see you in a few weeks' time. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy. Well, unfortunately, it's not going to be a weekend full of IndyCar racing. However, still find your fix of F1 or whatever else is out there. Sports is back and it's exciting times. But we'll see you in a few weeks' time. Thank you for joining us here.